guys. How you doing? I'm doing okay. I'm sitting around waiting again, and I actually use this time to chill. Sometimes I bring a magazine along. Sometimes I write in my journal. I do my morning pages. And sometimes I just find a shady spot, there aren't too many, and make some phone calls. So I use this waiting time as my chill time, and it really does help me relax and not feel so overwhelmed when I have a lot to do. So if you're going through periods where you're overwhelmed, try and cut out little snippets of time to just be with yourself and your thoughts, and it really does help. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, are you guys prepping? I don't want to use that word because it has a negative connotation to some people. Are you guys stocking up on some of your pantry goods? If you are, good for you. I've found that I don't stock up on a lot of things that I don't need. So I wanted to talk a little bit about stocking up on food for the least amount of money that you can. I hope this isn't too dark. It looks like it's really dark. There, that's better. Anyway, if you're going to stock up on some food, which I would highly suggest, because as we know, the problems that we've had lately make us want to stay home, or a lot of us do stay home. So you need to make sure you have enough food for you and your family. So one of the things that I do, and I've been doing this for years, is I stock up on food that I like, basic food that I like. And you know, it's not the time to run out and buy 20 boxes of food that you have no clue if you like, just because you think it's well packaged and you know, and that you can only use for one meal. So that's probably not the best thing to do. Even if it's cheap, use that food, use the cheap food that you're not sure of for your regular meals and not for a stockpile. And every time you go shopping, whether it's once a month, once a week, twice a week, whatever your thing is, try and allow at least, if you can, $5 to $10 to stock up on basic things. By basics, I mean rice, beans, flour, yeast. If you have a special diet, whatever special diet you need. But keep it to the basics. It's not the time for the stockpile to go into stockpiling fancy things. Enjoy those in the here and now. Try and buy multiple use items, like if you're buying canned tomatoes, or you can something like that you can use in a lot of recipes. Canned beets, you can use that in a lot of recipes, and try and get the most nutritious things you can for the cheapest price. Now I find that stocking up on spaghetti sauce is a good idea, because what I do with that, since it's already seasoned, you can add other seasonings to that and change up the flavor. You can use it to cook rice, you can use it to cook beans, you can use it in spaghetti, pizza, any pasta dish, any rice dish, and you'll already have a lot of flavor. And just because you're going with the basics doesn't mean it has to be bland. It can be very flavorful. So I'd also recommend stocking up on spices. Now I know spices can get to be very costly depending on what kind you buy. Try growing your own spices, simple spices you can do those in a windowsill. You can grow basil. You can grow chives. You can grow all kinds of things in a window, or if you have a shop light, you can rig that up and try and grow some spices in there. Or go to the Dollar Tree. They have a lot of spices, a lot of mixes for $1. Walmart has their own brand of spices that are inexpensive. So buy the basics and also buy the things that you like. If you're a fan of Mexican, buy some dried cilantro, some cumin. Cumin is a really good spice to add to a lot of dishes. It doesn't have to necessarily be Mexican. It's great in beans. It's great in rice. It's great in guacamole. So, try and buy spices like that, and those are not expensive. So stay away from the exotic spices and make your own spice blends. There's tons of recipes online, on YouTube, for making your own spice blends and adding them to your food. And you can take one basic food, let's say beans and rice for something simple. You can make it Italian flavored, you can make it Mexican flavored, you can make it Eastern flavored, whatever the spice mix is. Let's see. I have a couple things written down here. Oh, experiment with making a good basic bread with not a lot of ingredients. Leave out the milk, leave out the fancy ingredients in your loaf, and find yourself a good basic recipe. You can also add spice mixes to that. You can add garlic, you can add rosemary, you can add various herbs to your bread just to give it a different flavor. And if you like to make bread by hand and knead it and all that, because a lot of people like to do that just for stress relief, that's great. You can do that. Or look around at the thrift stores for a bread machine. And I'd recommend that most people have a if you eat bread, that you get a bread machine, because if you don't have the time to make a handmade artisan loaf, you can always just stick it in the bread machine and have fresh bread. You can stick the dough in there, you can make rolls, you can make pizzas in your bread machine. If you're a vegan or a vegetarian and you eat seitan, you can mix your seitan in your bread machine, your dough. It's a good thing to have. So I would recommend getting a bread machine. Another thing that I would recommend getting is some sort of a camp stove, or you can get those little single burner stoves that use the small propane. But if you can, get one that also can be converted over to a larger tank if need be. Because if you have a power outage, especially if you have an electric stove, you're going to need a way to cook. So I would recommend getting one of those, and they're not expensive. I've seen them on Amazon, and they're around $50–$60 the last time I checked. They may have gone up by now. I'm not sure. If you have a home, I would recommend investing in a rain barrel and a Berkey. A Berkey will filter water to make it drinkable. You can use all kinds of water. And if you have a rain barrel and there's a problem with the city water, at least you'll have a source of water. Plus that, it's way cheaper to water your garden or your flowers with rainwater. So that's another thing I would recommend that you invest in if you possibly can. And the time to get those things are in the winter, because I've noticed on Amazon that all those things are cheaper in the winter and the prices go way up once gardening season comes around. So you might want to look for one of those. And let's see, what else do I have? Make yourself a basic recipe book that you can keep with your stash that uses the ingredients that you have saved. And try looking for recipes that have simple ingredients, that are simple to make. But like I said, using spices, you really don't need to have bland food. Start collecting some food grade buckets. I've gotten buckets with lids for, I think, like $4. I can't say exactly what the price was. The lids were $1.50 and the buckets were a couple dollars. But I know they have them at Walmart. If you go into Walmart's bakery at the right time, they'll sell you their frosting buckets for $1. And you know, whatever they have, some are smaller, some are bigger, but they're all useful and they're food grade. So start collecting those, and it's nice because you can stack them and store your food in, if you have a limited space. You can use a closet, you can use a part of your basement if you have one, you know, so having a food stash, I think, is important, especially nowadays with the world being so unstable. And I would highly recommend that you start stocking up a little at a time. You know, I know a lot of people don't have a lot of money, but you know, even if you stock up on Dollar Tree rice and sugar and beans and allow $5 maybe every time you go shopping, it does add up. Now what I've been doing, because there was such a shortage on yeast and flour, I had plenty in my stash. But now when I go shopping, if I see that they have bread flour, I'll buy one, just one. I don't hoard it. And I also have a couple of extra, I like the quick rise yeast, and I have a couple of those, and I store those in my refrigerator. I'm not sure if you can freeze them or not, but I would have to experiment with that or do some research. But a good recommendation too is when you buy these things for your stash, to stick them in the freezer for 24 hours before you store them, because that will kill any bugaboos that are in there, because you don't want bugaboos in your stash. So those are just some of the things that I do, and I wanted to share that with you guys if you have an interest in it. And so yeah, so I'll be back later and we'll talk about something else. Okay, I'm back home and the day is almost done. Boy, today was a hot one. It was in the mid-90s, and I know some of you out there in California and stuff, you get into the hundreds. We can get that here too, but ugh, no, not a fan. When I was younger, I loved the heat. Whenever they said, oh, it's going to be in the 90s, I got happy and excited. Now I start to wilt just thinking about it. So funny how things change, isn't it? So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about your stash or my stash. And The reason why I think it's a good idea to stack up on the basics, because I have a couple of ideas here. First of all, Dollar Tree sells gallons of water, and I don't like to get too much, like, the little bottles of water and stuff. I don't like to buy those because of the environment. But on the other hand, I do think it's a good idea to have a stash of extra water. So I usually get the gallons at Dollar Tree. And then what I do is I get like maybe 10 of them, or, however many I have. And I keep mine on the stairs going down the basement over to the side. It's not a hazard because I don't walk there. So I walk on the other side. So I keep them on the stairs. And then as I use them up, I rotate on the stairs. So I always know which ones are the fresh ones and which ones are the older ones. But I usually filter my own water. Those are basically for emergencies. But even the water has an expiration date. And if it goes past the expiration date and you miss, using it, well, at least water your plants with it, if nothing else, so it doesn't go to waste. And don't forget to have enough for your pets, enough food, or at least to be able to make them food if you don't have enough of their regular dog food. So don't forget about the pets for water and for food, because, they depend on you, just like little kids. So anyway, now if you're going to stash basic food items, and this is the reason why I recommend that, because there's so many other things that you can make out of, and I'm just going to give you a couple examples here. Let's say flour, okay? Flour you can use, of course, as a thickener. You can use flour in breads, that, and you can make sweetbreads, or you can make savory breads, or pizza dough. I already mentioned that. All kinds of things with flour. So it's one of the best basic things to have on hand. If you have a lot of flour, you're not going to starve. And it's a carbohydrate, so that will keep you full longer. You can make tortillas out of it, so you can wrap your veggies or whatever else you have in there, So I'm just thinking of different ways where you can change it up so that you can have a variety of food without, getting bored or feeling like you're totally deprived. You can make your own pasta. If you have a nice stash of spices, you can, add garlic to your pasta. You can add basil to your pasta, whatever, sky's the limit. And so if you run out of pasta and you have flour, at least you can still have pasta. Another thing that you can make out of just regular flour, if you're vegan, you can wash the flour, and that's a whole process. There's a lot of YouTube videos showing you how to do that. It's not complicated. You just make a dough ball, and then you keep washing it under cold water until all the starch is out of it, and it leaves you with a very dense gluten ball. Of course, if you're celiac or gluten intolerant, that would not be the thing for you, but you wouldn't be eating regular flour anyway. So, and I would recommend that you get the unbleached flour, just regular unbleached flour. But with the
with the gluten, you can make seitan because the gluten is very high in protein. So it's a source of protein for vegans and vegetarians. So for my meat eater friends, at least you would have some protein if meat is hard to come by. So you might want to learn a little bit about that just in case. And if you need it in the future, you'll already know that you can have a source of protein without having animal products. Another thing that's really good to stock up on is dehydrated potatoes. And I would recommend different forms of them. You can get the dehydrated potatoes sliced. Sometimes they come in the packages. You can get sauce and stuff with them. But those are a good thing to stockpile in your stash. Even if you don't use the sauce with them, you can use just the potato part and rehydrate them and, use them for whatever dish you want. Shredded, you can get the shredded kind. It comes looks like a little milk carton, and it's shredded potatoes. I know I got a bunch of them at Costco, and you can rehydrate those, make hash browns out of them, or casserole, or what do they call it, funeral potatoes, where you put the cheese and all that in with it. But you can have some of those handy. And also flakes, like the instant mashed potatoes. My favorite is the Idahoan. They come in different flavors, and their Dollar Tree has them, and they're cheap. You can get a pouch for $1 or less. Some places have them even for under $1. I've seen them. So that's something you could use to make shepherd's pie. Some vegan cheeses. I have recipes that use potatoes in with other ingredients, so you can use the dehydrated potatoes. I don't see why not to make that. You can make dumplings, potato dumplings out of the dehydrated potatoes. Of course, mashed potatoes. You can make a lot of things. You can make gnocchi. If you have flour and mashed potatoes, you can make the potato gnocchis. There's just so many things. That's why I recommended that you find some simple recipes and make yourself a cookbook, like a survival cookbook. And, heck, you can use it all the time if you want, but at least you'll know what to do with all the things that you have in storage, and they won't go to waste. So those are just a few ideas. If you have an interest, let me know below about some of my other ideas on storing food and prepping. I'd be more than happy to talk more about it. But other than that, for today, I have nothing else. So I want to wish you abundant blessings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.